Oh, goodness, who is Felix and what is Paul going to say to him? That's what we're going to find out in Acts 24. We are starting to see that Paul is playing this out, right? He goes to Jerusalem. He tries to speak to people in the temple court. The soldiers went from arresting Paul to protecting Paul. Paul's a Roman citizen. And so Paul now wants to go to Rome. So he is being taken to Caesarea, beautiful place, and he is going to talk to the governor there. We saw that at the very end. Paul tried, like I said, to talk to people. It is funny, not funny, how offended, unable people are about people who talk to you, who share different opinions, and all they are doing is talking to you. Their ears are not ready to hear it. They're very angry. And the Romans had to whisk Paul away with a whole bunch of troops twice just to save his life. And so now they're going to be curious. What exactly did you do that made everyone so mad? Ananias comes with some of the elders and the spokesperson, Tertullus, to lay out this case against Paul. They're trying to explain what is wrong with Paul. And Tertullus begins with accusing him, saying that we have all this peace. We know you, Felix. You're going to be the person, the judge, listening to all of this. And as you know, you reformed this nation in so many ways. And boy, we're super grateful about that. And we don't want to detain you any further. This man's a plague. He stirs up riots. He's causing trouble, right? That's the one thing that the Romans didn't want to have happen, is they didn't want there to be trouble. It's why they got rid of Jesus. It's why all of this has happened. Let's just keep this kerfuffle down to a dull roar. So anyway, we don't want to detain you. Just let this end. We thought that this whole thing was going to end when we killed the ringleader, the sect of the Nazarenes, and all these, Jesus people. Even though he tried to defame the temple, we seized him before he could do that. And so all of this is weird. You tried to defame him. They called him a plague. You can't even prove that someone's a plague. They're bringing up stuff that a court, that someone can't even deal with. You can't prove that someone's a plague. You are defaming him. He's not trying to start up a revolution. He never tried to start up a revolution. None of this is true. He didn't start up riots. Like, if he says, hey, I believe in X, and then every one of them riots, he is not stirring up a riot. You are. So it's not true. He's not the ringleader of the Nazarenes. He's not trying to profane the temple. In fact, he tried to do a vow. He tried to show his penitence in general. They're trying to bring up charges against him. And Tertullus, who's a spokesperson, meaning that essentially he was someone who knew Roman law. He knew the right procedures. He knew how to talk to dignitaries and say flattering things, which maybe the temple structure didn't really know how to do. So this would have been something like he's going to be their lawyer to the Roman group. And it said that Felix tried to reform. We don't even know what all the reforms were, if they were just trying to flatter him. All we know about Felix is that, first of all, he was recalled to Rome about 2 years, somewhere around 58, 59 AD, for poor performance. He will notice that Tertullus is also using words like we, like he's representing the Jews, saying to the Romans, we believe this. And so we understand that you're a very important figure. And that's what they're trying to do, is that they're trying to pump him up, but they're trying to charge. And the Jews join in the charging and saying, yeah, that's what he did. That's what he did. So now you have this whole group of people accusing him. So when the governor nodded to Paul to speak, Paul gets up and says, you've been the judge over the whole nation for a while, and so I'm going to cheerfully make my defense. I'm not saying anything bad. I'm not doing anything bad. He's being as pleasant as he can. You can verify that it's not been more than 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem to worship. And they didn't find anything wrong with me. I didn't stir anything up. I didn't do anything at the temple. I didn't do anything to the synagogue. And according to the way, which they call a sect, that's going to be the Christians, I worship the same God they do, the God, the Father of all of us. The God that I believe in is the God they believe in. Everything has been laid out in law and prophecy and in the hopes of all these men. I'm having hopes that they themselves will accept that there will be a resurrection. Now, again, that's going to split people up because only half of them, or basically 1/3 of them, believes in a resurrection. So we heard this before. The Samaritans only believed in the first 5 books of the law, even though I believe that everything was laid out there. But this is divisive. And he is a Pharisee, and so he believes the law and the prophets, and talking about the resurrection again. So he's saying, it's not that I don't believe what they believe. I believe in what they believe. I believe in the law and the prophets just like all they do. Now, the one thing that's important to know is that at this point, Judaism was a allowed religion. They didn't have to convert to the Roman multi-gods. They were allowed to keep their beliefs. It was permissible. They were a small minority. They were considered to be weird, but they were allowed. They were a legal religion. So by him saying, look, I am just looking at the fulfillment of the Jewish faith. I'm not splitting from them. I'm not inventing my own religion. I'm not making anything up. I am just saying what the law and the prophets have always said. And that's it. And so then, God raised up Jesus. We should have hope in that same resurrection. The Pharisees would have agreed with him, for the Jesus part, but they would have believed in the hope of the resurrection. So he's getting agreement from half or 1/3 of the people that were there. So then he takes this message and he applies it. And I like this quote: to take pains to have a clear conscience toward both God and man. Judaism was a sanctioned religion. Like I said, the Romans weren't going to believe it. He's allowed to be Jewish, and he's saying, I am Jewish. I'm the same person I was when they found me at the temple. I was purifying without a cross. I didn't cause a commotion. And there were some of these Jews who came from Turkey. Remember, they followed him all along in his travels trying to slander him, that were making accusations against me. But these men themselves say what wrongdoing I did. If they want to say it, let them say it. But in the end, it's with respect for the resurrection of the dead that I'm on trial here. That's it. And again, that's going to split people up. The Pharisees are going to say, well, wait a minute. Is he on trial because he believes in the resurrection? Now they're going to start to worry themselves. Are you putting resurrection on trial here? And this is not going to be a crime in Rome. Like I said, being Jewish is not a crime, and believing in a resurrection is not a crime. So this is really kind of interesting. Now, Felix had a rather accurate knowledge of the way, which is going to be the Christian piece. And it says that when Lysias, the commander, comes in, he says, well, I'll decide your case. He orders the centurion to keep Paul underground because they're going to kill him if they don't protect him, and to give him some freedom. Let his friends come over, get him the things he needs. This is not prison, right? This is protective. So he has some sort of understanding in the differences a little bit between these new Christians, the way, and Judaism, but it still is considered to still be a part of Judaism. We talked about last time or a couple times ago how when the Jews got expelled from Rome, that was both Christians and Jews. They didn't see them as any different. There's also the suggestion that his third wife, Drusilla, was Jewish. She was the daughter of Herod Agrippa. That's the person who put James to death. The Herods were Edomites who became Jews long ago, so they have a long history of being Jewish. And so she probably told them the difference between Judaism and Christianity and helped him understand that a little bit better. So he might have been more knowledgeable because he was married to a Jewish woman, so that helped him understand it. So he sends for Paul and heard him speak about the faith of Jesus Christ, and he reasoned about the righteousness, and this is Paul, and self-control and the coming judgment. This alarmed Felix, and the reason is that, first of all, Felix was not a righteous man. Self-control, he was known to be a man who had a temper and not have self-control. And the coming judgment. Everybody is going to be judged. Jew, Roman, everybody. Paul is holding up a mirror to Felix, and this alarmed him. So he said, well, go away from my presence, and when I get an opportunity, I'll summon you again. At the same time, he hoped in the meantime that Paul was going to be able to give him money, like an extortion, for Paul to free himself. So that's, he's letting his friends come and bring him things and bring him the things he needs. I think that what Felix hoped is that money would come Paul's way while he's waiting in Caesarea, and that he would be able to bribe Felix and get him some money. So that's it. So essentially, he kept calling Paul in to talk when I think he was hoping that there would be a payment. It says that all he wanted to do was to do the Jews a favor. So he left Paul in prison. And again, the idea was hoping that Paul's friend were going to come with money, bribe him to let him go, and he'd get wealthy off of that. It was kind of like saying, hey, Paul, I'd like for you to talk to me again. Let me know, because I'm kind of hoping at some point a bribery will happen. It just never did. And in that period of time of 2 years, he again had some freedoms. This next 2 years, he was allowed to see his friends. His friends were allowed to bring him stuff that he needed, and he got a chance to listen to God's word, the gospel. And so he really wanted a bribe, and so they left him in there. When Felix was recalled, that would have been somewhere, like I said, 58, 59 AD, the idea is that he didn't really want to learn anything from Paul. He didn't want to repent. He didn't want Paul's preaching, but he kept hearing it because he was hoping for a bribe. So he kept bringing Paul before him, hoping that one of these times Paul would just be tired and say, okay, here's a bunch of money, let me go. So now Festus comes in and becomes the procurator in 60 AD. And then he dies in 62 AD. So it was another 2 years of opportunity for Paul to talk to this next guy and let him know about the gospel. This word is sort of moving up the chain of command, right? You can see how that's going. And that is why Paul is going to go to Rome. Paul is going to go to Rome, and he is going to be able to spread that word to even higher people. What I'm going to meditate on is that Paul didn't see prison as an end to his mission. He saw it as a new platform. He's locked away falsely, accused without justice, and held, even though the Romans didn't find that he did anything wrong. Paul is still going to talk to governors, soldiers, centurions. I mean, think of all the people he's talking to. He is not wasting time. It was repurposed. And when life stalls, hits a setback, when we have delays, and it's frustrating to us. Maybe we're even a little bit sorry for ourselves when something gets delayed. But what if, like Paul, we see those delays as divine opportunities? What if we see that as God trusting us to speak his truth in this empty space that we didn't expect to have? You think about, I'll give you an example. A friend of mine was visiting her mom who worked in an elderly care unit, and she was talking to her mom, and I was sitting out in the lobby, just like dum-de-dum. Now, Jill has ADHD. This was before cell phones, and so I'm bored out of my ever-living mind. And this woman comes up and sits at me, and she was telling me about how she didn't think her daughter loved her, wanted to hear from her, that she was going to die, without hearing from her daughter. And she told me, and I listened to her, and I prayed with her, and I thought, maybe that's why I was here. Maybe this delay, this waiting, was a chance for me to listen to a woman who didn't have anyone listening to her. And so what if God is really putting us in that spot? And so I'm going to meditate, I think this week or this day, on waiting places, waiting rooms. When you feel stuck and sidelined or misunderstood, is that a possibility that God placed you there to promote his message, to hear someone, to be there with someone. I held her hand, Think about that a little bit instead of thinking of it, I guess, as an obstacle. Think of it as an opportunity. And what I'm going to pray about is this idea that, I don't see setbacks as a sign of absence, a sign of something's wrong, but instead an invitation to trust, an invitation to do something. And if things don't go my way, I want eyes like Paul to see the room as an opportunity, to see the person, that moment that I was placed in, and give me courage to speak the truth, to be there for someone who's hurting, to train my heart to focus on other people and look beyond just my own comfort or my own desires, like, I just want to get out of here, let's go. Instead, don't waste any moment, not any season where maybe we feel confined, stuck, placed, but instead we want to be refined so that we can speak light into dark places, dark places. And what I want to share with other people is that's how you handle disappointment, that they're listening not to just what you say, but how you endure. When we look at Paul, we think about the trials he was given, the places he was beaten, the times that his life came under threat, and all the apostles and Jesus. And instead, every time it gave Paul a bigger audience, a higher elevation of audience that would reach more people. Eventually, the Roman Empire is going to be eaten by the Christian faith. That's how that happens. All these places that are early churches. I watched a documentary on all the churches that Paul planted. It's all because of Paul, and all because maybe he was stuck, all because maybe he got crashed on a boat, all because he cared about people to go visit them, even when it came at his own danger. Or maybe, there was a place where he could have gone home to visit Tarsus and maybe his family, and he didn't. He kept going. Every time, instead of having freedom, he had a bigger audience. And what if we looked at things that way too? That's a story to share, not necessarily about every victory, but how God shows up in the waiting rooms. And whether it's online, in a conversation, prayers with a friend, sitting in the place with the woman whose daughter hasn't called her and holding her hands and just listening to her for a while. That's when God opens up doors, not even when we're stuck in a place. All right, everyone, thanks so much. Appreciate you listening and watching. Please remember that you can email me at jill@startwithsmallsteps.com. I have other podcasts, Buzz, Blossom, and Squeak. It's about, enjoying God's nature right outside our front door. And Start with Small Steps, which is about kind of organizing our lives in a better way. I hope that you're enjoying these, and I hope that this has been good for you and that we're going through the Bible, like I said, one small step at a time. Thanks, everyone.